Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast, running on episode 66, 67. I forgot already. So, nonetheless, the guests are amazing. So, I'm super excited about this because I can talk about personal branding, career branding all day, every day, learn about it from experts like my guest today. But before we get started, this episode is sponsored by the Career Accelerator Planner. It is a planner designed for the corporate professional for you to track your wins, your performance, your projects all in one place. This way, you are better prepared for those crucial conversations around merit increase, salary, resume writers that you can provide them all your nuggets and wins, and they can boost that resume up. So go ahead and check that out at the Career Accelerator Planner.com. Again, that's the Career Accelerator Planner.com. So if you've seen the title, we're just talking about branding, but career branding that opens doors. And my guest today, Miss Meg Applegate. She is the award-winning resume writer, certified career coach, personal branding strategist, as well as the founder of Hinge Resume. So let me welcome this amazing, talented woman to the Career Dogs podcast. Hello, Meg.
Hi, Orlando. How's it going?
It's going well. Better that you are on and joining me today. So how's things going for you?
Good. I love that I'm on like 66, 67-ish. It's like I'm like
Yeah.
in the middle, like Harry Potter, like the three-fourths platform or whatever. It's
You blend
awesome.
right over into two episodes. You just consume two episodes.
Yes.
So love it.
Yes. That's awesome.
So appreciative of you saying yes, joining me in because we talked maybe a month and a half or maybe 2 months ago. We were coordinated. We
Yeah,
had
it's
our
been a minute.
pre-call with yeah, but we made it work. It's always on time. The timing is always work when we can get together and make things happen. So I love that. But before we get started, share with folks more about you, your company, and your background.
Yeah, so I actually started in the nonprofit sector and then quickly pivoted to higher ed. And so to do that pivot, I had to go to grad school. And the very first elective I took that was fit with my schedule was career counseling. And I fell hard. I loved it. And I knew in that class, I want to open a career coaching shingle. So that was kind of my start. And then fast forward to just having my third kid, all the cards in our life kind of got thrown up in the air. So my husband had a job change. We lost our daycare provider, which all parents know is like gulp, right? So we were making these critical career decisions like many people are today with recent layoffs, right? The wake of COVID. So that's where we
Mhm.
were as a family. And so we decided I'll stay at home for a bit. We had 3 kids, 4 and under. So while I was diapering and schlepping and sweating and play dating, I was dreaming up what is now Hinge Resume. So career branding that opens doors. So I have the privilege of walking alongside high achieving women, really connecting them to career advancement. So that's through career and brand coaching and then storytelling. So writing their career collateral. So resumes, LinkedIn, cover letters. So I'm no stranger to new career and work seasons. I think that's really common across the board, especially now with COVID, which then becomes a really critical piece of personal branding, right? Because
Mhm.
back in the day, like I know my grandpa worked for the same company for 20, 25 years. My
Mhm.
dad, similarly, 10 to 15 years. And so now that professionals are having to work to move up, to make more, right? We're hopping companies where before we leaned into that company brand for value and now we're bringing that value, then that promise of value to the marketplace. Hence my love for personal branding.
Love it, love it. Before the next question, I want to say thanks to Yusef for joining all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. Awesome, appreciate you.
Hey.
Wow, is it international presence now? That's awesome. Love it, love it. Appreciate you, sir. Any questions you have, go ahead and fill those up as you folks are tuning in. So, when it comes to career branding, and again, got a huge love for this topic, and but branding that opens doors. Let me first ask you, what does career branding? What's that definition for you, or how do you define it?
Yeah, I define personal branding as your unique promise of value. So if you think about it as your fingerprint in your work context, so it's an inner job and also an outer job. So you're thinking about what makes you you. So that ranges from strengths, skills, blends of experience, your goals, your passions, your interests, your worldview, even, right? What makes you unique? I'm a big believer that we're all have a unique wiring. So if you're a project manager, the project manager sitting next to you is approaching their work differently because they're a different person. So that's the inner part. And then the outer part is then how are you showing up? How are people perceiving you? Because sometimes that can be different in a good way and maybe in a not so good way. And
Mm.
so it's learning and reflecting on all of that. And then it's about articulating your story, all of that, what you bring to the table, your unique secret sauce, and how it matters to your career goals. So you're using who you are, the value you've brought to the table as a way to then land the job that you want or move up in your company, for example. So it's a way to then showcase your expertise as it matters to your career goals. Is that what you would say? What's your definition? I'm curious.
Oh, that's a great question. So I take it from Jeff Bezos. I heard his quote, and it says, person, your brand is what people say about you once you've left the room.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that sums up what you just said too. Like, how are you perceived is your brand. What we may want to put out there, but what's being perceived by other folks. So it's that fine tune. But I love what you said about the inner job and the outer job. Let's peel back a little bit more about the inner job. You touched on, you was going into it, personality, character, how you perform. What are some more tangible things that folks need to be aware about? Because I think we only focus on exterior. What's the interior stuff you see that we're missing that we need to be more educated and focus on to improve our brand?
Yeah, so I think that we don't invent the personal brand, right? It's something that we unearth. So, like I was talking about, that inside work that we have to do,
Mm-hmm.
we all have different priorities, we have different values. So, it's really identifying what your values are. And because I've learned, I remember in undergrad, I was like, I need to decide what I'm going to do now, and it's going to continue forever. And what
This
a
is
lie
it.
that is, right? Of like my experience I just explained. So, sometimes when we're feeling that kind of stuck or like unfulfilled feeling, it's like something might have changed. So values are a really big one. I think
Mm-hmm.
identifying your top 5 values is a great framework to then vet opportunities, whether it's through networking or informational interviews, or you're looking at a job ad, for example. I think also the inner work is strengths. And I don't mean what you like to do and what skills you like to use, because
Mm-hmm.
I think you can be strong in something and then you being a ball of stress on the inside. So, for example, I had a client who I was writing her resume for. She's an executive and she had these rich performance reviews. Awesome. And her boss was saying she is designed for crisis, just calm, amazing, like able to shake things up, bring people together. And so I asked her, I was like, is this what you love to do? And she was like, no, I've built that skill out of necessity for the work that I've been doing. And so I have a similar experience. I started a nonprofit. I did events. I was excellent at events, but I hate those details. It stresses me out. I didn't enjoy it. So some people may see your strengths and be like, oh, that's what she's about. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the inner work is, what strengths and skills do you like to use that bring you life, that bring you energy? Like when you're getting out of the bed in the morning, this is what I'm asking my clients. What problem are you excited when your feet touch the floor that you're like, yes, I get to solve this problem today? That's the kind of thing that I want my clients to know, because then you're going to be pursuing work that solve those pain points. And then you're going to be able to showcase how your values, your blended experience really is important and makes you different from maybe another candidate of why they have to have you.
The importance of vocalizing our personal brand. Talk to us about the importance of it, and then the how to.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest struggles, primarily I work with women, I work with men as well.
Mhm.
But knowing your career wins, owning them, and then sharing them is one of the biggest blocks. And I know you're passionate about this, right? With your career accelerator planner. I read a stat recently. Here, I wrote it down. Hold on. Oh, okay. So it's hilarious but sad and terrible. And I can relate with this. So women in particular, the research shows that they don't like to talk about themselves. So this stat says 77% of women can name something they find more pleasant than talking about themselves in a room of strangers. And when I say pleasant, here are the options. 47% would rather run errands in the rain. So that's one of the options. 42% would rather clean a bathroom.
What?
I mean, depending how big the bathroom is, I can see that. 43% would rather give up social media for 1 week than talk about themselves with strangers. So I think it's just so common. Well, first, which one would you choose? Would you rather talk to yourself with strangers, or would you rather do one of those options?
Me personally?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna talk about myself. I got no, absolutely.
Like, I'm not cleaning the bathroom.
Oh no, I'm gonna tell you what are really going down. So yeah, no, absolutely not.
I just find it so interesting because I think women in particular will tell me in my inquiry phone calls, I can't talk about myself. I don't know how to tell my story. And I think research would also show that women minimize their success, their career wins. And I find that in my friends, I find that in my daughter, right? Especially when you're like receiving a compliment, for example. It's like, oh yeah, oh, so where it's like one simple strategy is whether you agree with that compliment or not, just say thank you. Like, thank you for recognizing that in me. So I think getting comfortable with your wins is one of the most important parts. And if you have a hard time talking about them, talk to safe people in your life about them, right? I think one of the biggest misnomers about personal branding is that it's a brag, but it's actually a promise. Like when I'm a big Apple product fan. When I buy an Apple product, I know it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be modern. It's going to be on the cutting edge of technology, right? That's like when you get Meg Applegate, this is the promise that you get. You want to be very clear about what that promise is. So I think knowing what you bring to the table is really important. And part of that is being comfortable talking about that. So if you have, and most women do, according to the research, I think one tip that you could do is talk about your wins, or think about in the mindset of that you're speaking about a friend. Like all day long, I can shout from the rooftops about how amazing my career colleagues or friends and the awesome things they're doing. So if you can get in the mindset of like taking the emotion and seeing it as data, and if you have a hard time sharing it about yourself, think this is about a friend. And for me, I'm like, I have no problem saying, oh, this person's doing amazing things. Check her out. I also will say another statistic I ran across was that even though women have a hard time sharing their career wins, that, 83% of women felt that it was inspiring when a woman did so. So if you can't do it for you, think about it as a service to others, right? And an invitation to invite other people in to your success. So I think knowing what the win is, being comfortable talking about it, and then I will say, as you're probably passionate about, writing it down. Right? I mean,
I love that.
I pull into this CVS, parking lot and to pick up my kids' prescriptions, and they're like, "What's the birthday?" And I'm like, "Ooh," it's like I can't even remember my kid's birthday.
Absolutely.
Let alone, right? Like what accomplishment or what, a project or something I did last quarter and what the results were. So I think writing them down, one of my clients said, the biggest takeaway I learned from this resume writing process was to write my accomplishments down. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And you're passionate about that. How did you tell me the backstory on the Career Accelerator Planner? I mean, obviously that's imperative in personal branding.
Absolutely. So my partner, Karen Turner, she's a leadership coach, and she was a guest on my podcast, I would say last year, but it was something that she said in the conversation during the podcast that I was, along with tracking your wins. And I was in my head, I was like, ooh, let's talk offline. So after we finished the broadcast, I was like, what if we put together a planner? And she was like, what kind? I was like, well, something that does track wins. So the planner is designed, it has prompted questions. It's not just a blank planner where you write your ideas. It has prompted questions for time, date, project, what project you're going to work on, who's involved, what department head, what's your specific role. And then it has prompted questions post project completed. What was the outcome? Any money involved? What did you learn? Who did you network? And then it has the idea sections of what you can add for your next project. So it's just the same prompted questions over and over. So again, you're able to track all those wins during those conversations with your management around performance reviews, right? You can say, well, here's what I've done in the last quarter. I think then you're talking about salary increases, whatever, but it's tracked because the managers are not going to remember. They have to remember theirs. They can't remember yours, right? So
Yeah.
So
I
that
love
gap
that. It gives
yeah,
the context. I think that's what's
yep,
missing a lot too, is that maybe we've written something down, but the context of your impact, like,
yep,
was it like a slow pace, a slow market, or was, where did you turn around a project in a tight timeline, right? Like
yep,
that is giving all those details, because sometimes maybe we write down like I exceeded revenue X amount, but what was the context and what was going on? I love that.
absolutely,
Do
absolutely.
you use it for yourself?
I don't yet, not yet. But let me say this: I do because we're just doing the digital, so I'm switching to the digital copy now. So I have the
Mm.
physical, and you see the paper, but it's awesome. I'll send you a copy as well. So it's a
Yeah,
physical, it
that's
looks like a
awesome.
book, but it's a planner, like I said, and you'll get a copy as well, so you can thumb through it and give me your feedback.
Yeah, I
But I
love
think
that.
it's we once we launched it, um, I was part of a layoff, and so I was like, okay, I need to track all this stuff. So it kind
Yeah.
of worked in the same spirit of what we were doing. So and so was my partner, but we both then found something. So it was like, oh wow, okay, now we're more prepared to sell ourselves in the next opportunity. So it was really good.
Yeah,
So
I think you're onto something too, because I
yeah,
think, right, it's like we need it like yesterday when we weren't doing the daily habit. And so I think even remote workers, I know one of my friends was like, how do you shut down for the day? Like, how do you then enter into your personal life if it's just right outside your office door? And how do you, like, that would be a great way to like shut everything down and then write about what you were doing that day. Could be like a nice kind of like closing procedure or
yep,
opening, what have you, whatever works for you, whether it's digitally or you're kind of a pen and paper person. That could be a nice way of like, the day is done and move along. And I think
exactly.
I did that with a group of women, just random friends, for a week, or I'm sorry, a month. We just talked about our wins each day, and it really became like a form of gratitude. Like,
Hmm.
wow, look at how far you've come. And then to have other people encourage you in that. And we talked about like, okay, if you're in this struggle, then what would then be kind of that to do after that? So I think even doing it in community, someone that you trust. So I love that you created it with someone,
Yeah,
because I think doing this kind of work in community is really helpful, because like you were saying, the brand is part of it is external. So I have my personal brand coaching clients, I have them solicit feedback, and if you just see their faces when I introduce this exercise, they're like,
Ooh.
what do you want me to do? Like, I think I quit.
Can I ask family and friends first?
Yeah, totally. And so I have them ask like different spheres in their life, right?
Hmm.
So past colleagues, or they're in the volunteerism community, and just asking simple questions about how they show up. So, like, what are my strengths? What are my best traits? Where do I get, like greater gains than the
Hmm.
average person? What do you call on me to solve? Um, and I will say, every client is like, this has been the most transformational, right? Because
Love it.
either you're showing up as you think you are, or I remember in my training for my personal brand strategist, we had to do a more formal assessment, and it was anonymous, which was on purpose. And there are some things that were said that, of course, like pricked my ego. And I want to be like, who said that? What's going on? It's like, wait a minute. You focus on those negative things first, but it's so good to know because you think the best of yourself. You know your best intentions. And so you think of yourself that way, but that's not necessarily the case all the
Yeah.
time. So I think being ready to receive feedback is difficult, but it's also rewarding. I had a HR leader who basically grew up professionally in her company, and she decided, I need to take a break, rethink what I want to do. And so we were
Mhm.
doing this process with her, and she was like, I think I show up this way as a leader. But she was like, I don't know if I can apply that or translate that to a different context. I've only known this company, this culture. And so
Mm.
we had her do this exercise. And afterwards, she was like, wow, I feel a lot braver and more confident in how I lead. And so it's kind of like giving that push to be like, yes, this is true of you, no matter what the work context is, and that you can then translate to that pivot or that transition moving forward.
Love that. So you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to touch on that a little more about the statistics you provide about the women. Why do you think that is? Is that just out of fear?
Hmm.
Because they're executing, like they know that they execute and get stuff done. But why do you think there's a hesitance on vocalizing it and kind of being their own cheerleader?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for every woman,
Hmm. Right.
but I can speak for myself. I think that I am someone, and maybe because it's my profession too, that growing up as a kid, it's like when I was thinking about what I want to do for a career, I was like, I want to help people. And so for me,
Hmm.
I love shining the spotlight on other people. When the spotlight gets shown on me, I'm like, woo, I'm embarrassed. It's uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable. So I don't know what it is for every woman, but I think that there is some sort of discomfort. I
Hmm.
think people don't want to come across as um, arrogant
Right.
or bragging. So I think that if we can replace that bragging with more of a connotation of humble confidence, like I think if we recognize that we're all uniquely wired, we all have different gifts, and
Hmm.
showing up that way confident in those, but also humble, knowing that we all have stuff to learn. We
Yeah.
all have room to grow. But I think being confident in how you are designed and what you bring to the table is really important. And that's something that I'm growing in. I think that's what, other people also are growing in, but I do think there's definitely a discomfort. So depending on where that comes from, I think it may be different for everyone.
And
Do
I
you
would think
experience that as I mean, speaking for yourself?
in the beginning I did, or after a while, but after a while, um, uh, it was the storytelling piece that you touched on earlier. It's knowing how to. I don't lead with it, right? Oh, author this did that. I don't lead with any of that stuff. If it's recognized, and someone asks for a deeper understanding, then I can go into it. But I'm not introducing myself with all the accolades and things like that, or even in a interview. It's structured for that. That's the moment to do it. That's what they're expecting you to do,
Yeah.
right? So I think the storytelling piece. What I also want to ask you about that too is, do you think it may be we don't have the proper language or storytelling technique for us to feel comfortable? So it's more conversational versus grandstanding,
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, it's my time to shine, and I'm going to say this and shout it from the mountaintops. It's like, nope, you can say it in a communicative way that it's not bragging, but it's like, oh wow, that's good to know, right?
Yeah. I think
So,
if we think about it as a solution focused,
mm,
so thinking about as serving and others focused, at least with my clients, it's part of personal branding is you have to know where you're going in your career, right? Because the branding component is about positioning. So how are you positioning yourself in the market compared to everybody else? What makes you different? So if you don't know where you're going, you don't know who you're talking to, who the audience is,
Right.
then how can you share how you're different because you don't know exactly where you're headed? So I think in the interview example is in the job ad, it's telling you straight up what the pain points are in the company. And you're saying, hey, I've solved that problem before. This is what happened, leading with that result and using as a way of service, of sharing, I can solve that problem for you. This is how I approached it. And this is why you need me for this job. So I think if we kind of take the focus off of ourselves, I think personal branding can get a bad rap too of like, oh, it's so self-focused, but it's actually, it's to serve, right? It's
Yes.
like wielding your gifts and strengths for the good of others, I think is what we're doing in our work. I talk to so many women and I ask them every time, what's their why? What kind of, what does success mean to them? What do they want to be known for? And most every person says, I want to make an impact.
Mm.
That's different for everyone. I'm always like, yes, what does that mean? Right? Because that is different in every which way. And so I think all of us want to make an impact, and we can do that in all different ways, even if we're in the same occupation, same sector, same industry, right? So I think it's really owning who you are. I will say when I first started my business, I was terrified of social media. I was terrified of putting myself out there, that vulnerability, kind of that not wanting to be rejected. And the biggest surprise of my business is I love writing social media posts. I think it's so fun. I love that storytelling piece. I'm like the queen of metaphors. I love relating job search branding to other things. I just had a colleague the other day that sent me a picture, or actually this morning, sent me a picture of a deli that she goes to with doors on the wall. And she's like, every time I go to this deli, I think of you. And I'm just like, that is so cool. So it's like the way that I've branded myself is that opening doors is then when she goes to get her lunch, she's like, Meg Applegate. I'm like, that's so cool.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So when it comes to the career branding components, what are the not to dos that we should be aware of that folks think, oh, this is part of it, and it's like, that's really, you shouldn't be doing that. What are some don'ts?
Some don'ts. Good question. I would say kind of what you were talking about is kind of this shout it from the rooftops. This is all about me situation. I think that it's really about knowing your target audience because it's basically marketing when you get down to it. So knowing what the pain points of who you're talking to are. So whether you're in job search, whether it's your current company and you want to move up in the company. So knowing what the pain points are of your boss or of your department, and then being able to say, oh, I can do this because of these different avenues, or socializing your wins and your value in that way in your current company to then create that visibility to do those projects. So I think when people start bragging, people are like, forget it, right? They want to work with people that they like, know, and trust. And so creating that likability, I think, is important, but also creating that expertise, right? That I'm an expert in these few areas. So I think one don't would be like, I'm so generic, I don't know who I'm relating with. Right. And I will say, as a business owner, when I put up my website, like when I first started out, I was like, I want to fit in. Right. I don't want to stir anything. I don't want people to think I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm just going to play it bland. And I think that's where we can get ourselves in trouble with personal branding and resume writing. We get like into these buzzwords and like really generic. And then by the time you're reading it, you're like, what is this even saying? It's like, I don't get it. So I think if you go bland, there's no target, there's no goal. That's where you get in trouble because you're so vanilla. People don't know where to put you.
Well, so you're saying sum it up is to add a little spice, be confident,
Mm.
um, and necessarily, I would say I would add, don't necessarily lead with your personal brand, unless you got the folks like Grant Cardone and what's his name, Gary Vaynerchuk, who
Hmm.
are constantly content and in your face, but in they're unapologetic about it and tell you, hey, I'm doing this for a purpose because I want you to see me, see my content, build my personal brand. And I think from a job seeker standpoint, that may be extremely overwhelming, right? But I think there's still nuggets that we can take from being out there, which leads me to the question: how should job seekers begin to leverage LinkedIn with their career brand and making it more visible?
Yeah, I think the LinkedIn profile is so important. I have a lot of people that connect with me and they're like, "Yeah, LinkedIn, I'll get to it." And I'm like, "Oh, this is
Mm.
like prime real estate." When so like I'm like, "People are googling you just straight up."
Yep.
So this is the first social media platform that is coming up and you can own this narrative. And I will say LinkedIn is one of my favorite things to write. The about section is my favorite because you get to it's more human. Like
Hmm.
we're saying the same message of who you are and your value in your resume, in your cover letter, but in LinkedIn we get to weave in that human experience more because people want to connect with humans. And so that's what's so beautiful about this platform is that you can hook a reader because of your experience, whether it's your personal life, your professional life, weaving those in between in the lines, I think is one of the most beautiful things about LinkedIn because it makes you relatable. And
Mm.
so people want to work with people they like, know, and trust. And so if you can create an about section that is really relatable and also showcases your wins, I think you're ahead of the game for sure. I also think creating content, which I know some people are like, "Ooh,
Yeah. Let's
I don't
talk
know
about
about
it.
that. That's getting crazy, you know?
Let's
That's
talk about
getting
it.
a little too crazy." But I think in the beginning, like for me, when I was terrified, I think one thing to do when you're terrified is do it.
Mm.
Just do it. Even if it's terrible, just do it. I was talking to a friend the other day and she was like, I don't know whether I want to do this kind of coaching, selling this certain product. I'm worried about what other people will think of me. And I'm like, you don't have control over what they think of you. So if you're passionate about this, it was like this lifestyle deal, healthy lifestyle. I'm like, I know you're passionate about that. If you want to
Hmm.
share that and lead other people to that, great. And there people you're not going to be able to control what people think of you. So just start. Just do it and the confidence will come as you start. And I will say my writing has gotten better even though I'm a writer for a living, but my writing has gotten better because of that consistent discipline over and over of that storytelling over and over. But I think you can establish thought leadership, especially if you are in
Right.
career transition and you're making a pivot. I mean, I don't think you have to write anything completely profound. You can share an article, summarize the article, and put your take on what you think the article is and invite discussion about it. I mean, it doesn't have to be rocket science as far as establishing that thought leadership. But I do think interacting with people strategically is important. So, interacting with people in your industry or the industry you want to go to, and getting involved in the comments and adding value in the comments, not just like, I love it. Good
Hmm.
job. Like adding something you read recently or share. I'm a big podcast person, sharing a podcast that you listen to. Like it's that serving of what you're learning and then making sure that you're doing it in areas that you want to be known for. So for me, I talk about personal branding, I talked about resume writing, and professional women. That's kind of the three things that I talk about. And so consistently, that's what I'm talking about over and over and over again. So I think if you have these different areas of expertise and you want to pursue those,
Hmm.
then share articles in those and those avenues. Talk with people in those industries, and that's going to then help establish that thought leadership. What would
I
you
think,
say? I'm curious.
yeah, and I think two things. I think that's so important because for job seekers or people, whether you're a job seeker or not, um, and you thinking I have to come up with original content. I got to dance on TikTok. I got to do this. No one's saying that. No one's saying that at all, right? What we're saying is, hey, Claire, what we're saying, or should I say, what you're saying is you can repurpose other content and just add your 2 cents. And then what I think what they're missing is that you can start to be looked at again as a thought leader or a resource. They're like, wow, Megan's sharing all these things on AI or resume writing. And whether you're a resume writer or not, you're like, wow, these are some great tips. I'm gonna go their page or use that page because he's constantly sharing articles around this particular topic. For me personally, when you touched on long form writing, I hate long form writing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Why
and
is that?
I've
Tell
written a
me.
book. I've written, but my go to is video,
Yeah.
and live stream, and which is interesting. And I said this maybe a year or so ago that I have yet to do a live stream or post a video providing tips. I'll do it if I'm, I've done it in the past when I'm asked to speak or or on a panel, but I've never just said, "Hey, here's some interviewing tips," and I need to dig out the 20 years of experience that I have to start, providing that information as well. So it's interesting, but yeah, writing that is not my forte. I,
And it
I
doesn't
can,
have to be,
no,
right? I
no.
mean, not everyone is. I think that's finding, like you were saying, finding your own niche of what works for you
Hmm.
and what you want to be known for. And I think that you, like you were saying, you can be a facilitator of conversation
Yeah, yeah,
in a certain area. It doesn't have to be like, I'm an expert. I know all about this subject. Nobody knows all about a subject, right? So I think kind of taking that, I have to have this, like I think women get pinned down by this mastery mindset of like, I have to know everything about it before I put myself out there. And that's just not true,
yeah.
right? Especially in a social platform, is it's social, it's a conversation. So putting something out there as far as like a thought, like, hey, I'm thinking about this, what do you think about it? Right? I think that you can be a facilitator of conversation, but I will say in your career, you want to be thoughtful about that because the
Hmm.
internet has a long memory. So make sure what you're talking about is something that you're willing to kind of go to the grave with, essentially,
Yeah,
of like, yes, I said that, because I think we can get in trouble when, we all know those examples of like things dug way back in the past. So
exactly.
just make sure that you're like, yes, I feel integrity and character about this topic or about what I'm saying about this topic, that you can stand by it. Because I think sometimes we can get emotional and we can start typing things out, and then it doesn't really reflect well on us. So for example, like you just got laid off and you're gonna laying all the things out there, and it's like, oh wait, I didn't really mean that. I was just really upset, So it's like you want to be careful, and that affects your brand, right? Like
Yeah,
your reputation. So I think like being discerning and being wise about what you're sharing, but also not letting that mastery aspect hold you back. Like, I have to know everything about this topic. I know I struggle with that. Like, oh, we're talking about branding. I don't know every single thing,
right.
right? But I think you can use your experience too, and other people's experience, to showcase different aspects and different angles.
Absolutely. I love what you said about, and yeah, Claire said it too, right? Our words last online. So it's leaving that, you leave a brand trail whether you know it or not
Mm,
online. So
yeah.
that's, you be surprised. And people's
That's a good one. You need a quote. You leave a
brand trail.
brand
Can someone
trail.
hashtag that and just
Write that down.
you leave a brand trail. Got it. So you heard it here first, folks. Brand trail. I'm writing it down right now.
That's
So
good.
what I also love, and let me pivot, and Samantha, thank you for joining as well. If you, the folks that are watching, share quickly, drop in the chat if you create content now, just so you can say yes or no, because I'm interested to see how many folks do, because I ran a survey, and I put four different options. You want to learn more about job searching, content creation. I forgot the other two. And content creation came in second. It was job search first.
Hmm.
But I think what people again are missing is that being active, creating the content can help in your job search
Yeah.
versus just the traditional post pray having a polished um, profile. Like that's the basics. I think that's the fundamentals. That's the basics now. There's more that needs to be done. So with that, speak to what you're sharing with your clients. Um, Obviously the ones mainly that are struggling to tell a story, and then you're coaching them and say, hey, here's how you best put that story on this platform that can help you in your transition. Let me help you with that that about page and crafting that, and then educating them on why that's so important.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest blocks is being able to see the connective tissue of your story. Like, we're
Mm,
so in the weeds, we're so in the day to day. We can't do that, like zooming out very well. And I think that's where having somebody else, whether it's like me, like a resume writer, a coach, or even like a friend, to be able to kind of zoom out and see the golden thread of your experience is really helpful. So a lot of times, well, for me, when I write a resume, I start with the work experience first. So the top third is usually kind of that branding aspect.
hmm
And for someone who's DIYing it individually, do a work experience inventory. Like, go job by job and think, what did I love about this environment? What kind of projects excited me? What brought me life? What didn't I like? What drained me? And then even rate that work experience and kind of go line by line in your work experience like that. And you'll start seeing patterns emerge, right? Oh, I really loved marketing this client. I love the fast-paced environment of campaigns, or whatever it is. You're kind of going to be seeing these things pulled up. And then that's going to help you determine not only what you want to go after, but then how you're telling your story to say,
hmm
oh, I bring the revenue. I didn't right? Like, I didn't realize that I'm the revenue driver usually. Or I had a client that was like, I love to rescue struggling projects. Like, I love jumping in the middle and then bringing it to the finish line. Like, not all project managers like that. So it's like realizing what you love and then using that towards where you want to go is that storytelling aspect. So that's where I always start. I always start in the work experience because I'm looking at what the results were, what the impact was, and then saying, okay, what is connecting here and how does it match up to the pain points of the job ads that for
hmm
the job that they want? And that's where the storytelling then comes through, because you're sharing, oh, I have this track record of XYZ and this is why you need me, right? Or I don't work with a lot of traditional candidates, like a cookie cutter. Like, I went to school, I did finance, and I'm still in finance. I work with a lot of people like me who have a squiggly career. I went here, I went there, I downshifted, I took a break, right? And so then it's really about, how do I bring this all together? How do I connect all these dots to make people understand this is a good fit for me, that you do need me because I have these varying experiences. I've been both sides of the negotiation table,
hmm
right? For a buyer, for example. So then that way it's like, I know that the inside and the outside, and that's why you need me. So I think digging that up about yourself, matching that up to the pain points of the role that you want, and then leveraging that in your storytelling.
I love that because that gives the folks that are fearful of vocalizing their brand. They have, I'll just say, like the resume becomes their manuscript and just shows them this is what you speak on. It's already here, right? They already know it, but be confident. Be confident because this is who you are. Resume writers are not out there writing false information. This is what you're giving them, and you're just bringing more to it, more light, which is in crafting it very, very well for them to be like, oh wow, that right. There's that epiphany moment. They're like, I did all this. Like, oh my god, like Meg, you made amazing.
Seriously,
That's amazing.
I had a client where I delivered her resume via email and she responded like, "Wow, I can't wait to meet her." And I was like, "Oh, it's you.
Yeah,
This
look
is
in the mirror.
you. This is how awesome you are." I think it's the connecting the dots piece.
Yeah.
So, if you're struggling and being like, "I've done a lot of different things and I don't know how to connect that to where I want to go," is to do that inventory
Hmm.
and seeing the impact. And so a lot of, for example, resumes, it's like we talk a lot about like what we do, the activities, but like what is the impact? And
Yeah.
that's what's going to inform your brand. So it's what makes you unique and the value you bring, all in context of where you want to go.
Love it. We have a question from Samantha Vance. She says, "How loose do we need to be in today's job market where personal human connection is important, but professionalism is still mandatory?"
Yeah, I'm in the camp as far as LinkedIn and sharing is that you want to share personal details in a way that matters to your profession.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to be sharing everything about my life. I want to connect it back to the work I want to do or to what I want to be known for in my expertise. I mean, I'm of the camp that you can make, and for me, you can make anything a job search analogy. Like at
Yeah.
this point, I'm like, oh, that would be really great. Oh, that would be really great. But you want to also, like you were saying, the brand trail, right? You want to make sure that those breadcrumbs, those crumbs that you're leaving, that you want to be known for those. And so I would just be discerning about what you share personally, but no matter
Hmm.
what you share personally, you're tying that back in to where you want to go and your expertise. So for example, I wrote um a about section for a sales executive, and a lot of times I ask, what did you want to be when you grow up? What have you overcome? And she shared that she learned sales from her dad who owned an auto shop, and she was always
Mm.
kind of in the straight and narrow, just wanting to be professional. And kind of the intro, I talked about, I learned this, right? It makes it more human. And she's like, I felt really uncomfortable with that, but then I shared it with people and they're like, that's so true of you, right? So it's like we're sharing a personal detail that shows about her sales philosophy, but also is sharing a bit about who she is. And then that gives you kind of that juicy conversation in an interview or when you're connecting with people of like, oh, my parents were small business owners or whatever it is. It creates a connection point.
I love that. Just as you were talking, what came to mind was, right, we, especially when it comes to the resume. The resume, we're all to a degree black and white until you're able to communicate that story that brings, right,
Mm.
and pop to who you are, your brand, and how you come across. So, but a well crafted resume, I kind of analogy would use if Jerry Maguire, dating myself, phenomenal movie, right?
Yeah.
In the like, you're my ambassador, Quan. So
Mm.
the sports analogy, you have a sports agent and an athlete. That sports agent will work and promote you. I think your resume career, or should I say your profile, kind of promotes you before. If the resume is well crafted, it's as enticing for the next person. Okay, let's speak to him or her, and then from there, it's all you. A life to what
Mm.
and what's written on the profile and resume. But that starts with those two doors.
Yeah, and the LinkedIn is awesome because while you're sleeping, you can be magnetizing
Hmm.
opportunities. I'm all
Yep.
about that, right? It's working for you when you're not working. So I think doing that well, right? I think being active is important, but like you were saying, kind of the baseline is like, this is a sales page, this is a marketing page of who you are. So make sure
Hmm.
that it's hitting the right notes personally, and then it's making sense to your forward career direction, and then the active
Yep.
piece of sharing your knowledge, of that kind of service. You're basically you at service to other people, offering that value is what people love, right? People don't want to be like, when people like get all in your DMs and you're like, will you buy my program? It's like, oh, I thought we were just like having good conversation, good conversation. I don't want to, so I think like serving and offering value is such a good way to showcase your expertise and your unique wiring and how you approach things. And that helps in job search, that helps people decide whether you're a good fit for them culturally, for the role. You know, there are, you're making it easy for them.
Yeah. What are some additional items that we might not covered that popped into your head as we were talking about the career branding that opens doors? What are some other
Hmm.
elements that you one anything that you think of that comes across that you speak with your clients about that's a common theme that they're missing? You're like, oh no, this is part of it.
Yeah, I think we feel that we're kind of a mess a lot of times. I kind of think of like a tapestry, right? The back of the tapestry is like knotted. It's a mess. It looks terrible,
Hmm.
right? That's what some people feel about their work experience, like it's a mess. But when you turn it to the other side, it's like this gorgeous kind of weaving and picture. So it's like that's what the branding piece is that you can elevate certain things you want to be known for, and then you can
Hmm.
also de-emphasize other things you want to be known for, because I think one of the
Hmm.
traps is like, oh well, I did this in the past, so I must have to do this in the future even though I was miserable. Well, that's not the case. Like, if you don't like using those skills anymore, don't use them. It's like maybe you need to have like a bridge job in between those, but let's leverage the strengths that you have that you love to use. So we're going to be pushing those forward, and you're going to be framing your experience in a way that you're going to be using those strengths. So I think in the branding process, we're unearthing all of this stuff on the inside, on the outside. We're looking for those themes, but then we have control of what we emphasize and what we de-emphasize. So that's where you have control of creating that compelling narrative of who you are and where you want to go. And it'll change for each season, right? Like, I think that, in the past, I was an academic and career advisor. And so I emphasized different things about who I was. And now I'm doing something different. I'm still the same person. I
Hmm.
still have the same strengths, the same wiring, but I'm just using those in a different way. That's what I'm not a big fan of, like the career calling rhetoric of like, we are made for like one job,
Right.
one career calling. I think that we can apply our gifts, our strengths, our skills for individual work assignments, and they change over time as we change. And so it's in our power then to be able to explain and translate those skills in a new environment.
I love that what you said because in your personal story, your common theme is you're an educator still. You're still
Mm-hmm.
educating and advising. You chose a different vehicle to put that out. So that's really really good. I love that. I love that. Well, time is flying by. I say that every episode because the conversations are great. The content is phenomenal for folks that are listening. Um, what would you say we should be looking out for in 2023 based on this current career economy? What are some things that job seekers should be preparing for based on your personal view?
Yeah, I would say, in particular, in the vein of personal branding, I think it's more important than ever
Hmm.
to be able to differentiate yourself from other candidates. And I think that it's on you to connect those dots. I think job search is marketing. And so maybe the best person for the job isn't getting the job because they're not able to articulate what they bring to the table. So I think in 2023, it really comes down to being able to tell your story well in a way that matters to your prospective employer, for your job search, for your career goals. And you can use different methods to do that, right? On social, in person. I think part of that personal branding, and even obviously I'm a big fan of the resume writing process. People aren't, but it is job search prep. You have to know where you're going. You have to know who you are and able to get there. So if you're jumping ahead in different areas, that's where you're going to get stuck. You have to know where you're going. You have to know how you're different and how you're showing up. You have to know what you want to be known for, and then leverage that going forward.
Clarity is key. Love that.
It
Absolutely.
really
So,
is.
so as we come to a close, one question I have to ask all the expert guests: your personal mantra? Because I believe you said you ask your clients the same thing. So I posed that question to you. What gets you up every day?
Yeah, I love helping women live out their gifts and thrive at work and at home. And so to me, that is what lights me up. I love seeing the aha moments. I love women like owning, like, yeah, I do that really well. Like to me, that's super exciting to be able to walk in your gifts, in your strengths, and feel excited about doing that work. So whether it's paid or unpaid, that you're recognizing that value that you're bringing to me, that's so exciting. And then being able to tell the story about it, like being able for women to be able to walk in the room and say, I do this, right? Like my friend who was like, I thought of doors because of you. I'm like, to me, I'm like, that's so cool. Like that's what I want for my clients. Like I heard of this job opportunity and I immediately thought of you, right? Because of this is what you bring to the table, and I know that about you.
I want to know if people caught what you just did, because you humble, I would say not brag, but you said, I'm really good at this. And the way it came across was very authentic. You were passionate about it and it was humble. It was like, oh yeah, she loves what she does and she knows she's confident. And it came off great. So, and I could tell that's just authentically you. So folks, you need to watch the replay. We fast forward to this last part and watch Meg. And I
Well,
just
thank you.
pretty much gave her career brand and told her story. So I love that. Share with folks where they can find you, connect with you, consume, and work with you.
Yeah, so my website's hingeresume.com. I'm most active and love the most LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn a lot. It's my favorite platform. And then dabble in Facebook and Instagram, but my real love is LinkedIn. So Meg Applegate
Awesome.
is my profile.
Highly encourage folks to follow me, consume. Ask any questions you have post this broadcast, and I'll tag Meg for her to respond. I'm sure she'd be happy to do
I'd
so.
love
I'm speaking
to.
for her, even though she
Yeah,
right.
I would love to.
So awesome. I appreciate you again for saying to the broadcast coming on. Now I can call a friend versus just a connection. So I love that about you.
Same.
Anything you need, I'm willing to support. Your goals, your visions, your brand. Any last parting words? Anything that you feel you want to just say to the folks and keep them moving in 2023?
Yeah, I would just say thanks so much for having me. And I just want to just really distill and boil down that you have gifts and you can live in them. And even though maybe it feels like a hard time or things aren't going your way, like you are uniquely wired and designed and you have unique gifts and you can find a way to leverage those in your work. You can find a way to leverage those in your personal life. I don't think it always has to be this ultimate career fulfillment, that it's bigger than that. It's just a part of it. So I want everyone to love their work, but also know that there's not this, like, I think we create this pressure of like the career has to have it all. And it's not sturdy enough to hold all of that. So know that you have that value. And I hope that you can leverage your gifts in your career, but there's so many ways to feel fulfilled and complement your career in those.
Love it. Love it. Hang on for one, Meg. But folks, thank you for watching. Having a phenomenal weekend, and we'll see you back here next week. I'm going to close this out.
Have a great week.